It's not the house that's haunted. It's your son.
What's your favorite scary movie?
What's the boogeyman?
As a matter of fact, it was.
What is up, my spooky people? I am back with my co-host, and we're going to be taking a look at Freddy versus Jason. So going back to 2003 and going back to a film that I've seen quite a lot. Marva hasn't seen as much as I have, but she does love the film. She's a huge fan of Freddy and Jason. And even though this movie has caught a lot of flack over the years, it also has a cult following. And I can't really, be mad at that, because this movie is almost like a culmination of the original 80s and 90s Freddy and Jason films. And honestly, I can say that I like it a lot, and I cannot wait to talk about it. So, as always, and I mentioned it earlier, joining me is the lovely, the beautiful, Marvelous. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I feel like a lot of people think your name is Marvelous, and we call you Marva for short.
Well, we'll leave it at that. It's okay.
I think that's the.
We'll leave it at that. Because in all honesty, I've been stopped at like conventions or like other places where people ask me what my name is when I say Marva, and they don't necessarily believe me because they do think it's short for Marvelous, and I just let them ride with it. I've just kind of stopped trying to make a
badass.
point. You can thank my preschool teacher for that. She would constantly call me Marvelous Marva. So there you go.
Marvelous Marva. That sounds like an 80s wrestler. like the Ravishing Rick Rude.
Oh gosh. Yeah, I guess. I mean, shit, I was it was the 90s, yeah. So whenever I was in pre-K, so there you go. That shows my age. Thanks, by the way.
Hey, I'm older than you, so that's works
by
for
a year.
Me.
By a fucking year. You always go around saying that you're older than me, but it's only for a year.
You know what they say, a lot happens in a year. So
all right, and?
I've lived 10 lifetimes.
And I lived 20.
Yeah, Freddy versus Jason. This is going to be fun.
Very much so.
I have to bring it up. Mm-hmm. You've met Robert Englund multiple times.
I have. Where I work, which I'm not going to say where, but I have met him. He's great, honestly. One of the few people that I actually got starstruck with. I've met a lot of, like, I guess, quote-unquote Hollywood actors living in California. Not in Hollywood, by the way. It's, like, in the most obscure places, like cities like San Clemente, cities like Laguna Beach. I've seen them in, like, Ladera Ranch Santa Margarita, Coto de Caza, which is, like, a small little community near where my parents live. It's a gated community, by the way, and the only way that you can get in is if you have like a special code or if you know somebody who lives there.
And people who don't live in California wouldn't know that. It's kind of like people who think that Disneyland's in
LA as well.
It's not. It's
no,
like
it's 40, in Anaheim.
It's like 40 minutes away from LA.
And Anaheim is in Orange County.
Yeah.
Not necessarily in like where Orange County ends, but it's in Orange County area. Like where you and I lived before, we could drive to the area of Disneyland within 15, 20 minutes, and we were in the city of Orange.
Like places like Laguna Beach and San Clemente, that's old money. So a lot of like very
old money.
A lot of like wealthy people live there, including like actors or retired actors.
Yeah.
And
there's some people who live in Irvine too. I even know like some professional like sports folks. Like somebody who was recognized, I think, to compete in the World Olympics whenever it comes to LA. He's like a skateboarder. He came to to my location where I work too. Like there's a lot of faces that I see, and I never truly get starstruck. I've even met Demi Moore, which apparently Demi Moore is like a big actor. But when I met Robert Englund, I was just kind of like stuck.
Yeah, and you've met like quite a few people too, even outside of just random occurrences.
Places,
yeah. I mean, you obviously met Matthew Lillard at CreepyCon, so that was cool.
Funny enough, I wasn't as starstruck with him as I was with Robert Englund, which I thought was pretty hilarious because I grew up with Matthew Lillard, but not in the way that you did. You saw him through the Scream franchise. Yeah. I grew up with him through Scooby-Doo, so a little bit more on like the traditional side. I saw like a couple of his other films too whenever I guess he grew out of the Scooby-Doo films, or even before then.
He did a couple rom-coms and like a couple dramas.
Yeah, I also, like, obviously he took over voicing Shaggy after the whole Scooby-Doo movie franchise. So obviously I was consuming a lot of his media, but it wasn't until I met you where I sat down and watched the Scream franchise and I saw him be Stu.
Well, to give you some slack, I feel like there is a little bit of a difference when you know you're gonna meet somebody versus like
Abruptly
you at
them.
your job and you see freaking like Freddy Krueger walk in. Like it's
first, like, and I've met him a couple of times. So first time I had just entered my job, like I was very much on an entry level position, and I was just like working through the tasks that I need to get done. And all of a sudden he shows up in front of me and he ends up being one of my clients, and I'm just chatting it up with him, and then I look at his name. I'm like, wait a minute, the name looks really familiar. And then I look at him and I'm like, holy shit, it's Robert Englund.
Yeah.
Like, obviously he doesn't need to be in makeup for me to recognize him, but at first I was like, he looks like Freddy Krueger. And I was like, no, Freddy Krueger is fictional. Hold on, who plays Freddy Krueger? It's Robert Englund. And I look at the name again, I'm like, fuck, it's Robert Englund. And he was asking for something that we didn't necessarily carry anymore, and I told him about it. And where I work, which is Laguna Beach, people are very like temperamental. So if you don't have what they're looking for, they immediately lash out. And I expected that from him, but he was really nice about it. He was like, okay, well, I'll just figure it out. Grabbed his little briefcase and walked out. He was like in a full suit.
He seems like a chill guy.
He is. One of my colleagues actually has like ran into him at one of the restaurants that's nearby my work area. And he works like later. He has more of a part-time shift than I do. And he said, like, he just started chatting it up with him and he lost track of time. And, like, they were there for about an hour just, like, talking back and forth and so on. And, like, Robert
That's so cool.
knows my colleague by name, which I think is pretty funny. But my colleague has also been working there for about 5 years.
Yeah.
I've crossed by him when I'm walking through town. And the second time that I met him, I actually mustered up the courage to tell him, like, hey, I love all your work. Mind you, it was in the middle of him like confiding to another one of my colleagues about how he was affected by the Palisade fires. So I told him like, hey, you know, like obviously I know, I just want to say this right now since nobody else is in here. And obviously you can stop me if you feel like this is completely inappropriate, but I am a huge fan of your work. And he kind of like took a moment. I could tell that he was taken aback, and he just looked like, he gave me like the Freddy look.
I know what look you're talking about too. Yeah.
And then he was like, oh yeah, well thank you. And I'm like, I promise you it's not just like the Nightmare on Elm Street stuff. Like I loved your quick little appearance in The Hatchet. I've heard rumors about you starring in like the Pinocchio movie that's coming out, the horror version of it. He obviously couldn't confirm or deny it, but
yeah,
he just kind of like gave me a small nod. And then he actually took the opportunity to promote a TV show that he has on Apple TV Plus, which is meant for kids. And it's more so going through different artifacts and like the lore behind it and like the spookiness behind it. And he also, which turned into a tangent of him talking about how he truly believes that museums should return a lot of the historical artifacts that they have that are scattered around the world to the countries that they originate from, so the people who live there can learn about their culture and their history. So like this man's very, very educated, and you can tell like the more you talk with him, he's not just like some silly goofy character or like goofy actor who will just kind of be like, okay, thank you, and then walks off. Like he'll actually try and strike a conversation with you. And then once everything was done, I apologized again profusely. I was like, I'm so sorry, like I know you were talking about a heavy subject, but like I just kind of wanted to get that off my chest. And funny enough, we were being audited, so the auditor didn't realize that it was Robert Englund until I walked up to him and said, I'm a huge fan of your work. And then she made a bigger deal than I did. She's like, oh yeah, like I was fucking petrified of like Freddy Krueger. I couldn't take a bath anymore. I only could like take showers, but I was still convinced that even through my shower head, your claws would come out. And he gave a small smile. And once Robert left, my colleague that I mentioned, who Robert knows him by name, said, and I quote, which I kind of want to go this year during Halloween, that he gets in full costume, walks around in a specific neighborhood in this city to give like tricks to the adults, but treats to the kids, because this whole neighborhood area shuts down for Halloween. So he has like the blade knife fingers, he has like the sweater, he puts on the full makeup, the hat, everything, and walks up and down the streets just like acting like Freddy.
That's dope.
He hasn't done it for the last couple of years, but because a lot of people have been citing him in town. They think he might do it this year. This might be one of his off years.
Yeah.
Is what I'm trying to imply.
That's dope.
That was my slight little tangent of like Robert Englund.
No,
I'm sorry,
you're
guys.
Good.
I'm sorry.
That's a lot of information. So that's cool. Yeah. But no, yeah, he just seems like a chill guy. And
he is.
From the interviews that I've watched him in, like you can tell he's educated. You can tell he has not just a passion for Nightmare on Elm Street and the character of Freddy, because we know he loves Freddy.
Yes.
Like, but he also just has a passion for movies in general, and
horror especially,
and he comes off educated. You know, very, very much.
Yeah.
But I mean, Freddy versus Jason. Before we get into breaking this film down, and before we do that, I do want to say that Marva and I don't really have specific notes for this, just because I've been watching this movie like a lot since 2003. I think I've seen it like maybe 2 times a year since like 2004-ish.
Probably. I think I've seen it a total of like 4 times. But I still remember bits and pieces, just not exactly how everything happens in chronological order. So,
what was your first impressions off of this movie when you watched it for the first time?
I never fucking thought that the universe that Freddy exists and Jason exists were in the same universe, to be quite honest.
Yeah.
Never in my life would I thought that would be the case. You're telling me that the Elm kids also exist in the Friday 13th franchise? That's fucking insane. And I think that's the first time where they actually incorporated different quote-unquote universes existing within each other.
I will preface this. I think we made note of this in the Jason franchise review.
Mm-hmm.
Marva Liz has not... I'm just going to call you Marva. Marva has not seen Jason Goes to Hell.
No.
So she doesn't know about the end where Freddy comes up and grabs the mask.
No, I don't.
So yeah, so it was already teased that the universes were in the same. Yeah, and then like I think a few years later, that's when they did Freddy versus Jason.
Yeah.
But you're not wrong. Like when you're watching those movies, like I mean, you always want to think, oh, what if like Jason. They took Jason to Manhattan. What if you take him to, fucking Haddonfield?
Yeah.
take him to Illinois, right? And then watch him meet Michael. Like you think about that, but then to see confirmation, like, oh, these 2 universes do exist. Like it's very cool. And my friend Mark, I talk about him a lot on the podcast, KRW Network. He made it a point to say not many films have a versus topic.
No.
And can nail the hype of it.
Yeah.
No matter what you think of the writing of this movie, if you think maybe there's plot holes or like inconsistencies, like we'll get into that with the Jason stuff,
and even the Freddy stuff.
I feel like the hype is real, and there's very few movies who have caught that. I mean, maybe the most recent one in the last like 10 years has been Godzilla versus Kong. Probably
to an extent, but that's like an action series.
Yeah, but it's just it's the versus in and of itself. Yeah. When you did just the idea of 2 characters that you didn't think existed in the same universe fighting, like not many movies are on the level.
And they can do it in a relatively seamless way.
Yeah. And I think this movie captures that.
Yeah.
And man, dude, like I'm such a huge fan of this film. By the way, shout out to Shawnee from Creepy Sweets. This is one of her favorite films. If not, did she say her favorite? Or
I think it's one of her favorite slasher films. Or like,
we put her on the spot. I put her on the spot.
You did. Yeah, you did. We caught her off guard with a couple of questions here and there, which by the way, if you guys want to check out that episode, it's a little ways down, but it'll be Creepy Sweets.
Yes. And make sure to go follow Shawnee on Instagram and anywhere else where you can find the Creepy Sweets moniker. She's wonderful, an amazing person, makes some of the coolest treats and
they're delicious
desserts, that you're ever gonna see, and they're fucking delicious.
In all honesty, like just like how I said in that episode, I'm obsessed with her black icing. Fucking obsessed to the point to where I'm actually considering on getting her, like having her bake me a cake for my birthday this year. But we'll see.
So, fun fact about this movie: it's directed by Ronnie Yu. Now, Ronnie Yu is known to do a lot of action movies, right? He's a Hong Kong film director. He's done The Bride with the White Hair, Fearless, Legacy of Rage, Saving General Yang. Like, he's done a lot. But he's done a couple horror films. One of them being Freddy vs. Jason.
Yeah.
The other one being 1998's Bride of Chucky.
Bride of Chucky. He did Bride of Chucky.
Yeah, Ronnie, you did Bride of Chucky.
Wow.
So,
he gets thrown big names then.
Yeah, so I thought that might be funny for you to hear that, because Bride of Chucky is also one of those movies that, and when you think about it, they're kind of directed similar too. Like, and when I say directed, just like the direction of the film, not so much the story or like the cinematography, just like the fact that they both take place on rainy situations, like you know, a lot of rock music is playing, a lot of
similar, I guess, like structural ideas.
Yeah.
But the execution of it pertains to the story of each character that's coming to life.
And fun fact about Bride of Chucky is in the very beginning of the movie, whenever, I mean, you've seen it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. In the very beginning of the movie, when they're showing the police station that has the evidence locker where you see Chucky, it quickly flashes over and it has a Halloween mask, like Michael Myers.
Oh, yeah.
It has a hockey mask, and then it also has the Freddy glove.
Dog, if I swear, if Haddonfield and Michael Myers actually like exist in the same universe as both Jason and Freddy, that universe, I would want to live there. I would be constantly. I'm not gonna lie. I would be constantly on guard. Constantly on guard. I would never go to a lake in New Jersey area or anywhere on the East Coast. I wouldn't want to be anywhere near Elm Street, and I wouldn't want to go anywhere near Haddonfield.
Where is Elm Street? I guess
it depends, because the original house that was filmed is in Pasadena, if I'm not wrong, or it's somewhere in California.
Yeah.
But where the stories of Elm Street take place, I don't know.
Where is Elm Street? I'm doing this right off the fucking cuff, man. Nightmare on Elm Street. Let's see. What does Google have to say? Springwood, Ohio. That's right.
Okay, so no Ohio, no Illinois, and no East Coast.
And not even Ohio safe.
No, apparently not. So, but I would love to be there, just so this way I could sit and like hear the news, I guess. Obviously, I'd be devastated from all the losses, but I would want me in this timeline existing there, so I'd be like geeking out ever so slightly, but at the same time, very much like mourning the losses of the families. I don't want to be insensitive.
I feel like I'm such a conspiracy theorist and such a dumbass. Those are two combinations right then and there, I'll tell you. But
I wouldn't say you're a dumbass, but all right.
I know that was I don't know where I was going with that. But let's just say the type of person I am.
Yeah.
The way I accept things and the way I research things. I quickly accept stuff. Marva can back this up.
Yeah, I question a lot of things. He and I have very different personalities when it comes to information that we come across.
If I'm in the same neighborhood where Freddy's attacking people, and I wake up in a dream, and Freddy's like, at that point, I'm accepting death because I can't run that quick. And even if I do run, he's gonna catch me.
He'll find a way.
It's his dream. I'm in his realm, right?
Yeah. Unless you're a dream warrior.
I feel like at that point, all hell is like just gonna break loose because I've accepted death. But that doesn't mean I have to go out in a way that I don't want to go out.
Yeah.
So I would probably just get butt naked and just start like twerking. I don't know. Like I would
what
do.
What the fuck?
I would do something that just like completely,
like
completely throws homeboy off. Sorry, Robert Englund, if you're ever listening to this.
Oh my god!
Like,
okay,
I would just do something that's completely like you get my point.
I get it, just to throw him off guard. I think he'd start twerking with you. Let's be real.
He might, especially like Nightmare on Elm Street 4 Freddy. Like,
goofy ass motherfucker, goofy, but in the best way possible.
Anyway.
Going back to the film.
Yeah, we've gotten completely off topic. Yeah, but that's my fault.
I mean, it was also because of the fact that you brought up the director and he directed Bride of Chucky. So not too off track, right?
So this stars Robert Englund, obviously, as Freddy Krueger. However, this doesn't star a known actor that embodied the Jason role, which was Kane Hodder. He wasn't in this. They actually recruited somebody new. I don't know what the reason he was for Kane not being in this movie. I'm sure it's been talked about. You know, it's been what?
When did the Hatchet films come out? Was it around the same time?
No, that was like years later.
Okay, never mind.
I don't know why he wasn't in this. I'm sure if we look it up, we could probably figure it out. Yeah, he's done interviews, I'm assuming. But it looks like Ken Kurzinger was the one who played Jason Voorhees.
Yep.
The final girl in this was Monica Keena, who played Lori. Kelly Rowland was actually in this.
Yeah, the girl with the red streaks in her hair.
She was in this and she played Kia. And then Jason Ritter played Will. Now, Jason Ritter is the son of the late, great John Ritter. So, and John Ritter from Three's Company, the old sitcom. He also played, I believe, one of the boys as the adult version of them in the very first It. And then, he was also in Bride of Chucky too.
Oh, wow.
John Ritter. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Lots of history.
Rest in peace, man. But anyways, this movie stars a pretty good cast, and I feel like a lot of them carried their weight in this.
They did.
Some of them were still starting out like Kelly. They weren't like full on blown like seasonal actors or actresses yet. But either way, they did the job, and I think they helped carry this movie to what it was, which was a fun, just good time, man.
Yeah,
and
very much like survivalist or survivor of the fittest type of film.
And the reason why I keep hyper focusing on fun and good time is because this film just gives you what you want as a fan. The way it starts off is literally a montage of just everything that we've seen in the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise.
And in the Friday the 13th franchise. Because I think the movie starts off with Jason walking around in the woods and then Pamela Voorhees calling out to him, right?
That happens after.
That happens after?
Yeah, the Freddy's what starts the movie, and then he wakes up Jason, and when he goes into Jason, that's when we see the dream that Jason's in, and then he brings him back to life.
Oh, okay. Yeah, and then that's how Jason ends up on Elm Street terrorizing the people. Yeah. And then we have Laurie going around discovering the Freddy Krueger name, which was causing Freddy to start hunting these kids.
I want to dial it back real quick. I want to say what's funny about that scene when Jason gets to Elm Street, essentially, when he terrorizes the house there and he kills the asshole boyfriend. Like, honestly, fuck that guy, to be honest.
He was a prick. Yeah. I was waiting for his death.
Yeah. So, thank you, Jason.
Yeah.
So, when he killed that dude and then everyone's running out of the house, I find it so fucking funny that Deputy Scott, otherwise played by Lachlan Monroe, he's just driving. He lowers the window. Are y'all in some need of assistance? And then the girl's like, "What the fuck do you think?"
Yes. It has its comedic moments. It definitely has its comedic moments.
Well, what is the logic in that? Like the happenstance that the deputy just happens to be driving by right when that murder happened. I thought that was
sees a bunch of girls. Oh no! Gibbs says like, "What the fuck do you think?"
Yeah.
And then like Laurie screams yes, which is hilarious to me. Gibbs is still like wrapped up in a towel. Yeah. Drunk and like crossed out of her mind.
That kill was super cool. I actually like that kill a lot. Mm-hmm. It's probably one of my favorite Jason kills because at first you kind of think it's going to be some lame old machete just stabbing kill.
No.
But then you see in good old fashioned monster zombie shrink Jason, he throws the machete down to the ground. You're like, wait, what's going on here? He goes and grabs the bed by each side of the frame.
And fucking folds
it up.
Turns him into a sandwich. But, like, the man is laying straight up, so when he gets folded, everything's broken. His back's broken.
Such a cool kill, man.
I know. See, I don't know. I think Gib walks out and then sees the whole scene, and that's why she runs out?
She walks out and sees blood on the floor, opens the door, sees him, screams, runs out.
And that's for everybody. I don't like Kia for the beginning portion of the movie because she's very much pressuring Laurie to bring her standards down to hook up with the asshole boyfriend's friend, who's also a complete drunk.
And who's also just there literally just to fuck.
Just to fuck. That's it. That's all he wanted to do. And Kia was kind of feeding into it. That was the one. But Kia's development as a character went on in the story, and I started to like her around the end. But I could not look away from the kind of pressure she was placing on Laurie to just kind of like settle.
I think it was definitely one of those moments. And I feel like we've had these moments in real life to where, as an outsider looking in, you know, we would see that as like, what the hell?
Yeah.
But obviously, you know their friendship is strong, especially when, like, she sacrifices herself for Laurie later on.
Yeah.
So, like, obviously, she definitely has character flaws, but they've known each other for a long time, it seems like. And that might have just been like her moment of relapse there, where she thought she was doing a good thing by helping her friend get laid, but
Yeah,
it does come off a bit bitchy, you know,
it does.
and a bit weird.
Very weird.
Keep it real, but ultimately, you know, like we do see, like you said, like they are good friends. We see the development. We see what she does. But after that scene, whenever they, you know, leave the house and everything, which, by the way that scene started off too, they were talking about fuck, marry, and kill, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is such typical, like, 2000s.
Teenager, pass the time type of shit that you would hear, see, and, like, know stories about later on.
Well, since we already talked about this, what do you think about Jason's design in this movie versus the other ones? Because we've actually been watching some of the Friday the 13th movies, and we've been doing a better job. If y'all remember from our old episode, we talked about how hard it is to get through them, but we've actually been watching them pretty much from beginning to end. So
yeah, I just don't think I've played the first one, so I've jumped into the second, the third, the fourth. I think the first one is the one that you and I struggle with the most.
Yeah,
which is very sad because the first one's like set in motion the rest of them to come out.
Iconic. Yeah.
I just think I've also watched the first one so much that I've been a little burnt out. But that's just me. So I thought it was similar, not exact, to how Jason looks like in is it part 4 or 5 where he comes back? I think it's 5, right? He comes back from the dead.
No, it's 6.
It's 6?
Yeah.
Okay, then never mind. Jason looks very similar to his character design in 6. I think he has more of like a darker hue in Freddy versus Jason versus movie 6.
It's almost like he has like a honcho or like an oversized like jacket or something, right? Like it's in the Freddy versus Jason.
But who knows? Maybe they're trying to make him look bigger because it's a completely different actor too. I'm trying to give them that kind of credit.
Oh, the dude is pretty big.
He is big.
He's like 6 something, yeah.
But maybe they're trying to make him look bigger or in comparison to the other Jason movies. Because if you hadn't told me that this was a different actor, it wouldn't have registered in my brain. But now that I'm thinking about it...
Now that you go back and look at the
he walks a little different. He carries himself a little different. But that, I mean, how can you make sure you live up to the reputation of an iconic horror icon, like killer, if you will? And... not slip up here and there where you're like a fill-in for a certain actor who has been portraying him for years. And not to discredit Ken at all, but he did a very, very good job. It's just, I could see why it wouldn't be identical to the Jason that we normally see.
I think it was a good, like, what's the word? Amalgamation? Or... integration? The combination, I guess, of different forms of Jason, like the different versions we see of him. Mm-hmm. Obviously, this is supposed to be zombie Jason, though, so he is, you know, decayed and everything. And I want to say probably movie 6 is his best design.
Yeah, zombie Jason.
When he comes back for the first time. But this is probably up there. Like, I don't really hate it, but I do remember this being a talking point for discussion when it came to, you know, this movie. But I don't think I dislike it, though. I think it's pretty up there as one of my favorite Jason designs.
I'd say top 5. Top 5 designs. First one being the original classic, where he first comes across the hockey mask. The second one being him with the sack over his head. Now,
I know I'm the one who's watched this a lot, but correct me if I'm wrong. They don't do the whole he's a child molester in this one, right?
For Freddy?
Yeah, it's only strictly the remake from what I've told you in the past.
No, I don't think so. I think he...
Because they do play a lot on the fact that he abducted a lot of kids.
Like, I think he's still very much a child murderer. So they do still talk about him killing a lot of kids whenever he was alive. And then whenever he got older, he killed like older kids. So obviously teenagers. But I don't hear them talking about Freddy being a molester. Actually, because Robert Englund's involved, I wouldn't think that's the case. Because remember, they didn't introduce that until the remake.
Yeah.
And the remake is the one where they bring up the idea that he would molest the children and then kill them.
Because in the older movies, once you got to Kirsten and onward, the story became so much around the high school kids that you really don't hear a lot about Freddy's past. Mm-hmm. But in this movie, they make it known that, like, there's even a scene, I believe, in the police station after the house scene where the boyfriend gets killed. When she's walking down the hall, like, they have a scene of, like, all the missing child's, like, pictures.
Yeah.
And they all just, like, it's a cool scene where they all kind of turn around and look at her. And I was like, oh, they're really hammering down the fact that he was, like, a child murderer. Like, they're really bringing that back. Like, his past.
Heavy on there.
Yeah. And once we get past the scene at the police station, we finally get introduced to Will and to Mark. They're over at what seems to be like an insane asylum, right? Or something.
Some sort of asylum. They're being kept there because of the dreams that they used to have. And throughout this entire movie, this is something that you and I kind of like brushed past, if you will. Whenever Laurie first is trying to remember the name that this like newbie cop brings up and realizes that it's Freddy, the other, like, when the newbie cop brings up the Freddy name, the senior cop, or I guess the sheriff, immediately shuts him up, says, don't say that name ever again. We don't say that name. Done deal, end of story. So my headcanon is that the entire county is trying to erase the idea of Freddy, and because these kids were having dreams of him, in order to make sure that they wouldn't spread the word of Freddy, they tossed them into an insane asylum.
Yeah.
And, like, obviously they weren't sleeping just to make sure that Freddy wouldn't get him, yada, yada, yada. So that's another reason why they're tucked away in a place where even schizophrenics, like people with severe bipolar personality disorder, or just any form of, like, psychological disorder that causes you to not function in a day-to-day setting would be in there.
Right.
I think at one point they were taking, what was the medication called again? Hypnosil. They were taking Hypnosil in this facility, which is something that
I don't think they knew they were being given it, right?
The name is brought up. I don't remember what it is, but I do know that both of them, the two duos, mentioned that they stopped having dreams
as soon as they got there. Yeah,
right when they got there. So obviously Hypnosil is being given to them, which I guess is like counter to movie 3 of Nightmare on Elm Street, where Hypnosil is very much like a new drug that nobody really wants to experiment with. Yeah. So now they know what it's for, and they're giving it to Bill and his friend. Will and his friend.
No, you're fine.
Yeah. And, like, now I guess that I think they made a conscious decision. Correct me if I'm wrong, but there's a scene where, like, the two of them get together and they talk about not taking their medications anymore and how it's weird that they're not dreaming after so long. And then they stop and they get out, either that or when they get out, because they're not taking their medications, that's when they start dreaming again and Freddy's haunting them.
That's when they start dreaming again. They don't take the medication in that one scene because they're trying to break out. Yeah. So they can't be like
completely dozed out.
Yeah, that's why I don't think they know exactly what they're taking yet. Yeah. Will brings up later in the movie, which we'll get to, where he mentions he never had dreams when he was locked up there. Yeah. And that's when that makes them go look up, you know,
what it could be. Yeah, and then Hypnosil is brought up into the whole franchise, or the movie, if you will.
I think that's why they probably weren't taking their meds, because they didn't know if they were being dosed up or not. And they probably were also.
Yeah, to make them a little bit more docile and not talk about it overall.
So that makes a lot of sense. But I will say, the sheriff in this movie, because we did kind of bypass him, he's the one going around telling everyone, like,
shut the fuck up.
Don't say his name. I'll lock you up if you do, right?
Yeah, very similar to how Jason is handled in movie 6.
I think this guy, I think they recasted him, but I'm pretty sure he's supposed to be the deputy the deputy to Nancy's father. When Nancy's father was a sheriff. You remember what I'm talking about? The dumbass who, when he goes, go watch my daughter at the end of the movie, and she's like, get my dad, he's out here. And he's like, huh? You want me to go get your dad? Yeah. Yeah. Like, plus, I think that would line up, because that he would have been a deputy in the late 80s, and then this is the early 2000s. So
he would have made it as far as police officer career goes.
So I think he's supposed to be that same guy, which is why he's so, I guess, traumatized, because even though we didn't see him for the rest of those movies, he was around, so he probably saw all that shit that what Kirsten heard, then, you know, Alice, and then so on and so forth.
Yeah, definitely. So obviously now, after about like a few years of complete silence where it's being stirred up again, he's panicking on the inside.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So once we get done with the will scene and everything, we transition back. I believe at some point around here, the boyfriend's the asshole boyfriend, his friend gets killed. And a very funny
By Jason.
Yeah, in a very funny scene because
I think he tells off his dad.
He tells off his dad. He's talking like a lot of shit while he's drunk. Like, I heard his name. I heard his name, Trey. I'll take him out myself.
Yeah.
And then gets like just dog walked like a second later.
I think he gets sliced. His dad walks out to bring him in and then try and move his body and his head rolls off.
Yeah.
Which is insane. Now,
we don't hear anything about this like on the news or even with Lori's dad because the dad seems to be cool with the sheriff, which that comes into play later because the dad's a doctor. And we don't hear nothing from the sheriff either, but Kia is the one who makes this a note or makes note of this whenever they go to the school is that they're actually pinning the murders on the friend who just got sliced up, that he's the one who killed his best friend and then went and killed his dad and then he took his own life. Yeah. So that was something that I guess the sheriff was trying to spin on the whole situation. He was trying to cover
it all up, not come up with a story to where he doesn't have to say, hey, you know, there's a demon out there who haunts people's dreams and kills them.
And that's where the writing of this movie comes into play. It's not too big of a deal, but like if you don't like pay quick attention to like what Kia says, you wouldn't know that. And I feel like that type of stuff needs to be there because it kind of adds layers. It goes to show the links that the sheriff would do to cover this up. Yeah. But yet again, you only hear about it through Kia and that's it. Like it's never really brought up anything else again. So it is what it is. I feel like the story they were trying to tell, they still told it. Could it have been told better? Sure. But you know, it is what it is. And then we get the cool scene at the school where Lori's freaking out. She starts singing the song 1, 2, or she's having the dream.
She starts having the dreams while she's in public places.
Mark pulls up. He starts singing along with her. And then she sees Will for the very first time. And
her long lost love.
Yeah, we glossed over that. So you want to talk about that real quick? Because that's actually one of the reasons why she's so against hooking up with anybody in general.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess jumping back to the beginning of the movie where Kia's pressuring Lori to just kind of like bring her standards down, they talk about how like Lori's first love is Will, and that Will suddenly disappeared with no letter, no note, but she's holding out for him knowing that he has to be out there somewhere, not too far away, somewhere like close enough to where he can feel or she can feel his presence.
That's some Boy Meets World type love, bro.
Essentially. But that she doesn't plan on giving up on him, at least not anytime soon. So Kia, like you said, probably wasn't doing it in a way to kind of be a dick towards Lori. More so like, hey, you know, you never really know if he's ever gonna come back or remember you or will love you the way that you think he loves you. So let's go ahead and have you move on.
So now that Marva painted that picture, when she sees Will for the first time, the stress of Freddy, the stress of the fact that there's a murder in her house, and then now the stress of seeing her like love of her life for the first time in years, she just faints. And
she does.
That takes us into when Kia actually gets, I guess not really attacked by Freddy, but Freddy comes after her. And a thing to make note of is that he does this with pretty much every character leading up to Gib at the party scene, but he can't do anything to anyone else because he's not strong enough yet.
The fear isn't of him. The fear is mainly of Jason.
Yes, which that's the whole point why Freddy even brought Jason back is because during that montage, it's leading up to a point that the characters are not, like by the time you get to Alice and stuff like that in the movies, no one's really afraid of like Freddy anymore.
It's mainly Jason.
Yeah.
Like, or they're not afraid of Freddy anymore because they don't know about him.
Yeah.
Now, like, Jason's going around and creating a name for Freddy, but Freddy only shows up in the dreams. So they can kind of rationalize that, okay, it's not an everyday thing. And just like how you said, Freddy's not as strong as he used to be. So it's not like as if let's say Lori dozes off for a moment or like closes her eyes for a second, it's not like as if she's in Freddy's realm right away. Freddy needs to draw her in one way or form. So she's also going through the classic moments of like making sure she doesn't sleep, making sure she stays awake, very much like all the other Elms kids, if you will.
Yeah.
And then that's where we get the backstory that, hey, in this like Freddy versus Jason franchise or story, if you will, I think that the last wave of Elm kids, I think you and I kind of like make the headcanon that they were in their parents' belly. Either that or like all the Elm kids are dead and these are like the people who reside on Elm Street, but Freddy just has like a really bad rap with just anybody who lives on Elm Street to begin with. Be it like if they were involved in his murder when he was still human or not.
Yeah, it's a little weird because the older movies very much hyperfixated on the fact that he was going after
Elm's kids only.
Yeah, the people, like the kids of the people who killed him.
Yeah.
But I feel like at some point,
he just started killing.
Yeah.
He just wanted to kill.
Cause like people like the people who were under Alice, like that grade and on, they shouldn't have even been in their parents' they wouldn't have even been born yet at all.
Not even procreated.
Yeah. So
but maybe a thought, an idea.
Yeah, but Freddy still goes after them, so it's just kind of like because I think you and I made the headcanon that Kristen is like that she would have been like what because Nancy
8 months, 9 months.
Nancy was already in college, if not graduated college.
Yeah, and then you have Kristen, who's like technically 16, even though she looks like she's 21.
Yeah.
So that's like what 12 years of difference. So if Nancy was 10, this is even before Kristen was born.
And that's like being generous, if you want to say maybe
like in the tummy, because I think that's where you and I are like, okay, well maybe these people were pregnant. You never know.
Yeah, because I think you and I were saying it didn't make sense for them to be so young, right? Like because they're like, I think when
over a decade
when Dream Warriors happens, like they're technically
14, 15.
Yeah, because Alice is in the same grade as Kristen, and she doesn't graduate until movie 5.
Yeah.
So if they're juniors in movie 4, then that means they were sophomores in movie 3. So that's crazy.
Yeah. So if anything, like at this point, Freddy is just killing to kill. Anybody who lives on Elm Street is an easy target right away. He wants to create that fear on Elm Street that'll spread everywhere else to where he can kill anybody and anyone that he desires. Or at least that's the headcanon that I have.
And it finally does. But before we get into the party scene, there is some cool like exposition here where we see kind of like Mark's story and why he's important. He's the one who I guess encountered Freddy back then and survived it. Like he was probably must have been one of the last wave of kids.
Yeah, probably.
Before everyone started getting locked up in the asylum. I think he even mentioned that Freddy took his brother from him and stuff like that. So he's one of the last few survivors. He has like kind of like intel on Freddy. He must have researched it back then before he was thrown into the asylum and stuff like that. And he mentions how like it's pretty much gonna be a buffet now for Freddy because he fucked up. He went out there and like sung the song with what's her face. It pretty much made it known that Freddy exists to an entire school. So it's pretty much going to be a buffet now because he realized that the parents and the police force were trying to, subdue that memory and just kind of make Freddy fade away. And then they're over here just blabbing about Freddy and everything. Constantly. So yeah, it's like Mark and Will did kind of fuck up there. But at least in this way, you could maybe argue it's not a Band-Aid over the situation. Now they have a chance to actually
get it done.
So Mark and Will figured that out at least, and then Will wants to go get Lori and kind of just prepare for what's probably going to happen because now people are going to start thinking about Freddy. People are going to start going to sleep. And we get to the party scene, and somebody does go to sleep. It is Gib. I actually liked her character a lot. She seemed like the outgoing, but also very chill. Like you could just smoke a blunt with her. You know. The death scene's a little weird though, man, because they included like this party goer who is like
almost tries to take advantage of.
Yeah, like literally, I think he's actually making out with her too at one point. So
tries to.
2000s, man.
Yeah. Poor Gib. I mean, she's like kind of moaning and groaning, but not because of what the guy's doing, just because she's like trying to call out for help.
Yeah, she's trying to survive Freddy inside the dream.
And the guy's taking it as, okay, she likes it, so let's keep going. Let's keep taking advantage of her. And then Jason shows up and skewers both of them before Freddy can get his kill. And
which, by the way, this is a kind of a dark subject, so I'm going to lighten it up a little bit. We know Jason is strong.
Yeah.
We know he's a zombified entity, right? He flung that dude.
He did.
Like, Have y'all ever seen, I can't visualize this because we're not on video, but like those cartoons where like someone just gets thrown so far that they almost become like a little dot on the screen?
Kind of like with Pokemon, with like Jesse and James.
Yes. That's what he did to that dude.
He did.
And that was a full-grown man.
Yeah, probably like 18, 19. And he wasn't a light dude either. I think he was a heavier set guy.
Like, that's fucking insane,
yeah.
bro.
Turned cartoony for a quick moment there. Which I think first time watching it, I actually laughed. I was like, wait, what the fuck?
I'm actually happy, though, that he just yeeted that dude. Because, I mean, obviously...
Man was not decent.
Yeah, what he was doing. But that to me was just so funny. And that leads to him actually impaling Gib at the same time when he killed that dude. And that kills Gib inside the dream. And that's what really pisses off Freddy. And that's what sets this movie in motion. And that's where the versus comes into play. But I'll let you take it from here.
I don't remember the rest of the plot. I think, or at least the specifics, I should say. I think, what is it, like Freddy either pulls Jason in? Because I remember like Freddy yelling out like, no, she was mine, she was my kill, like why would you do this? And then
we get like some comedic stuff where like they're drinking some Everclear. They light Jason on fire. Jason kills them.
Jason does the kill.
Jason like slices up like half of the party. Like he's cutting up cakes, cutting up kids. Like
everything in between. Anything that moves or anything that's in his way, he's slicing with his machete. I don't know if Freddy materializes or not. I don't think so. No,
not yet. We don't see Freddy like in the real world until he takes over. Man, I forget his name, but the guy who's the play on the character from Jay and Silent Bob.
Oh,
when he takes him over, like we don't really see him materialize until then.
Got it.
Everything up until then is just kind of like Jason, dream moments, you know, like you said, where they're not in the dream realm, but he'll pop in for like a split second and then just like pop out.
Yeah.
You know?
So I guess he goes into Jason's head a couple of times. He goes into a couple other main characters' heads a couple of times, and then they all end up near Crystal Lake, right?
Yeah.
Or somewhere near it.
But before we get into that, let's go ahead and talk about, I guess, the elephant in the room.
Yeah.
How do you feel about the quote-unquote weakness that Jason has for water? There's supposedly a counter argument to it, but I want to hear what you say before I tell you it. I want to see if you have your own counter argument.
So it's not just Jason's fear of water that throws me off. It's Freddy's fear of fire as well. It seems like the two of them materialize this kind of like kryptonite that neither character never really had. Now, the way that I could rationalize Jason's is that he drowned when he was younger, which had Pamela believing that his kid died, or her kid died, excuse me. And that's why she was like wreaking havoc on the original Crystal Lake grounds.
Yeah.
Which that could stem one of his fears, right? But any other time where he's walking around or he's near the lake in the regular Friday the 13th movies, he's not freaking out. The sight of water doesn't scare him. But I guess being drowned a second time probably got him. But with this kind of drowning, he wasn't in control. He was chained up. He had like cement, rock, something holding him down, which led to his death. And drowning is a very painful and very slow death. You're very much aware that you're dying. And you're very much aware that like people talk about it like as if you feel your organs fail as it continues. Like you see the surface of the water, you see where the air could be, but you just can't get to it. So on a more psychological level, it could be more scarring than getting burned. Because when you're being burned, the first 30 seconds of it, you feel the pain, and then afterwards you're screaming because like you're not feeling anything. It's almost like you're in a state of panic. Your nerves have already fried at that point.
Yeah.
So you have two different kinds of deaths that are known to be painful in different ways. One where like people say like your lungs are screaming out for air, but the only thing that you can do is breathe in water. So it's like as if you feel your lungs fill with water. Versus with fire, it's like your nerves are already shot. You're already probably being burned to a crisp, and then you're trying to breathe in, but all the oxygen around you is not there, so you're suffocating.
Yeah.
Both involve you running out of the oxygen that you need, that your bodies need. It's just on extreme sides. And I think the idea of is that like Freddy's on this side of the spectrum where like fire is very intimidating to him, while Jason's on the other side of the spectrum where like, well, all right, he's already undead, right? Like he's back to life. Fire's not going to kill him, but what can stop him? Water.
So
that's how I rationalize it in my head. I think it's stupid for both of them. Don't get me wrong. Like that's my general answer to the story, like to the question. But if you want more of like, okay, well, this is how I can make sense of it. That's my whole explanation from it right there.
So I'm with you. I think it's stupid in general that there's even no weakness because Jason's a zombie. Yeah, he's dead. Yeah, but someone did make a point. I think it was on Reddit. And then I also think Mark brought it up at one point as well. And it does make sense. So we know that in like other movies, Jason, as a zombie, can swim in water. Yes. And he can't really drown because he's a zombie.
Yes. He's even shown to walk up from the lake.
Yeah. He walks up from the lake in Freddy vs. Jason multiple times. Yeah. So the one thing about this is that someone made a point that when Jason is inside Freddy's dream world, Freddy has full control over Jason, right? Yeah. And even though Jason is dead, whatever little part of Jason that is still there, the soul, if you will, Freddy can interact with that. So adult Jason may not be scared of water.
But kid Jason is.
And zombie Jason obviously isn't scared because he can't fucking drown. He's dead already. Yeah. But since Freddy was inside his mind and whatever like piece of soul was there that Freddy's tampering with, he was able to break into his child area, and that's where he's afraid of water. Because that's when he's only afraid of water. Once that dream sequence is over and once the fight is happening, like you mentioned, they're fighting all over the lake. Like he even hops out of the water at one point too. Like you can tell it's not, the water doesn't bother him. It was only in that one moment. Yeah. So I think that does make a lot of sense. Yeah. Not the biggest fan of it. No. I'd rather have seen the fight continue.
Yeah. Than seeing the both of them shake.
Yeah. But I think that does make sense though. So
to a degree it does. I guess jumping into the final fight scene, seeing the two of them go at each other and hack each other up is insane. Like Freddy has his razor hands chopping into Jason. Yeah. Jason has his machete chopping into Freddy. And it seems like at one point Freddy has the upper hand, but then Jason comes and like grabs Freddy at the last moment, almost saving Laurie, if you will, like either intentionally or otherwise, I'm not sure. And we see Jason get that final kill on Freddy. Walks out, has Freddy's head in his hands, but I guess the final moment is that Freddy winks at the camera, insinuating that he's not really dead.
The final fight was fire.
It is.
Like, no pun intended. I know there was a whole explosion at the end. But, like, at this point, you don't care about, no offense, you don't care about Will. You don't care about Laurie. No. Like, you just want to watch the fight. Exactly. That moment when they bring Freddy out of the dream, which is a nice callback to the other movies, you know, back in the day with Nancy and all that, bringing him out of the dream. When they do that, and he turns and he goes, he's looking around, and then he turns around and he sees Jason right behind him. Yep. Man, Robert Englund is such a good actor because you can see the expression through the makeup.
The shock and the fear.
Yeah, just he's like, oh, I'm fucked.
Yeah. I think that's why like he immediately starts just going ham on Jason to try and stop it because he knows Jason can't die. Yeah. But he still tries his very best to like at least impair him for the time being so Freddy can go after Laurie and Will. But
like it's basically Freddy fighting a zombie essentially. Yeah. And like you said, that's why he has to be on the attack because he can't really do nothing. And we know Freddy though can feel pain.
Yes, very much so.
So much to the point that like when he was brought out of the dream, like he would get kind of like beat up by some like teenage girls here and there. Yeah. So like he knew he was fucked in that situation. Mm-hmm. But overall the fight was badass, man. I could see why an action director was actually, you know, on this. Yeah. The fights were cool, man. I will say though, you have heard about the like alternate versions of this movie, right? Like how there was
You told me the first time that we watched it, yeah, which I thought was pretty cool.
like there's multiple scripts supposedly. One of them was pretty close, but still nothing came of it, and it was the Hellraiser shit. I think there's a I'm not too sure if it was ever leaked or whoever wrote the script maybe I talked about an interview, but it's pretty well known in the horror community like how that movie was supposed to end with like the Hellraiser shit happening and homeboy like Pinhead coming up and like pulling Freddy and Jason into
hell.
That would have been badass.
Yeah.
Like,
if anything, that would add even another layer to it. Like, wait, what the fuck? Like, Hellraiser's also part of this?
Yeah.
Hold on.
Pinhead's here too?
Yeah.
Like, bring them all here, man.
Honestly,
and
yeah.
I think this might be headcanon or this might just be me, like, misremembering something, but I also feel like I feel like I read this somewhere that when he would have pulled them in hell or whatever that cube is, whatever shit, that he would have, that we were supposed to also see Michael there too.
Maybe. So all the horror icons would have been there.
Yeah. Like maybe Pinhead make a little collection there. That would have been...
Which also makes sense to why you see the Michael Myers mask in the evidence bag with Jason and Freddy's like iconic items.
Okay, I don't know if they had all this stuff planned out or whoever wrote this script, but let me tell y'all something real quick. You know how it's not just Pinhead, right? He has like a whole like
army.
I forget what they're called. Like they're like the acolytes or something like that. Whatever they're called. He has like 4 or 5 of them. Can you imagine a movie where like Michael, Jason, and Freddy are like they're locked up, chained up, and everything? They have to break out and they take on all of the
acolytes.
That would have been badass, dude. That would have been some shit.
That would have been really fun. Very interesting for sure. For sure.
This movie has like a 40 and 50% ratio on Rotten Tomatoes. 40% critics, 50% audience.
I would give it a 6. Higher than standard.
A little better than average.
Yeah, it's not a movie that I necessarily can sit here and be like, wow, it's a cinematic masterpiece. But I'm thoroughly entertained whenever you put it on and whenever we watch it. Anytime that it's like put on for background noise, I always catch myself at one point sitting down and actually watching the film.
I agree. I don't think it's, like a Martin Scorsese classic, kind of like what I like to point out when it comes to movies. But I will say, I think it's like a 6.5 out of 10.
Yeah. I know you rate it higher because you do have nostalgia towards the film.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
No. But anyways, guys, thank y'all for tuning in as always. Freddy vs. Jason, it's been so fun to talk about that. We'll try and talk about some older movies too. We're not going to just keep doing like newer stuff. So be on the lookout for all of that.
We're constantly mixing it up. If you guys liked our podcast and you enjoy it, go ahead and like take a screenshot or let us know in the comments. And if you do take a screenshot, just like send it to your friends. Let them know what you think of that podcast altogether and whether or not like you're thoroughly entertained or you feel like your friends should listen to this, because in all honesty, the more people who tune in, the more we get to like keep talking about horror and find our own niche. I mean, we already have one, but we get to talk about horror all together and geek out with it all together. So we appreciate every single one of you. Thank you again for tuning in, and we'll talk to y'all next time. Bye.